I'm a student. Yeah, I decided to go to broadcasting school, and here I am in a studio about to record a podcast on my own for the first time about something that's really important in my life, something that I've followed for a long time. I've watched it for so long that I can't even remember not watching it. Maybe there was one time I took a small break from it. Well, I can't remember if it was intentional or not, but I did. I'm talking about pro wrestling. And pro wrestling's been a part of my life since I would say I was about 4.5, maybe 5 years old. And I was living in, Cabarrus County with my aunt. And my cousin was watching it one weekend. And the earliest thing I remember, this was the NWA. So, being I live here in North Carolina, this is the deep South, and this is the 80s. So I had to be like 80. It'd be like 83. So I was, probably about 5 years old. This is NWA, WCW country. Before it was NWA before it transitioned to WCW. And my earliest memory was watching the Road Warriors, Animal Hawk, rest in peace, Hawk. Watching them squash a couple of jobbers. And I just remember looking at these guys and just seeing the face paint, how ripped they were. And I'm just like, wow, those guys look cool. And it had nothing to do with what I saw in between the ropes. It was just the presentation of it. And you got to remember how generic everything looked at these times. There wasn't a lot of pomp and circumstance. Commentary was probably average. I can't remember who was calling the match. Like I said, I was about 5 years old or something like that. So it drew me in like immediately. And honestly, I was probably hooked the moment I saw that. And it didn't matter. Every single chance I got, I wanted to watch it. And that was something that stuck with me ever since. And I just can't remember a time I wasn't watching it. And it just became a part of me. And I loved every single bit of it. And as I got older, and watching it just go through its stages and even transition to what it's become now, and I'll probably get into that in later podcasts, but right now, this is just to let you know about me and what I'll be doing here. In general, I can remember tag team wrestling being so big during the 80s. Probably pound for pound, the NWA roster was probably the best on the planet. And one of the main things that got me were the tag teams. I can just remember the Rock and Roll Express. Yes, these two, punk rock at that time looking small guys. A smaller tag team that probably worked how a lot of teams should probably be working today. Like, the only time they really took people down was when they did it together. And their finishing move, of all things, was so generic for today. But back then, their finisher was the double drop kick. Think about it. A double drop kick finished people. And imagine, drop kicks are just thrown out like clotheslines these days. But a double drop kick finished people. I mean, their presentation, the bandanas, the crazy hair. I mean, again, it was who they were and how they were presented to me that drew me in. It wasn't necessarily, their theme music was cool. Their theme music was awesome too. I might just stick a clip of that in here real quick. And then there were their rivals, the Midnight Express, who probably have the coolest theme of all time. And that's probably just my opinion. That song would just play in my head constantly. But the one guy that probably drew me in the most and got me sold for good, Lex Luger. Lex Luger. And I know probably a lot of you will probably listen to this and you'll probably groan when you hear that name, but you got to understand, as a 5-year-old kid, Lex Luger personified every single thing that you probably wanted to look like, that you probably wanted to just like represent in the business. I mean, the guy looked like he was chiseled out of granite. He was athletic, he was powerful, and it's just like, he didn't even have to say a word. When you saw that guy, you immediately stood up and paid attention. Now, in between all of that, you still had your staples. You had your Ric Flairs, you had your Dusty Roses, you had your Steamboats, and of course, the forming of the Four Horsemen, the original Four Horsemen, the Arn and Ole Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Ric Flair, their manager J.J. Dillon, who was just as important to that faction as anything a lot of people forget about. J.J. being their mouthpiece. The guy managed like a wrestler, but a lot of times when you actually would see him wrestle, he wrestled like a manager. It was the oddest thing. But in my opinion, that's probably what made him special. And then, later in the 80s, seeing Sting and the Dingo Warrior for the first time, a couple of jacked, face-painted guys who eventually, settled into Hall of Fame careers, but knowing I saw them early on without, the pomp and circumstance that they ended up having, made me feel kind of special as I got older. I'm just like, I know that guy, I watched them go on to, main event, major shows, win multiple titles, become iconic, even with the shorter on-top career that Warrior had. I mean, to know where you saw somebody where they came from, it made a big deal, to me personally. And then, again, notice what I'm saying here. It's the people themselves. That's what drew me in, and that's what kept me interested. And to me, that will always be what's most important to somebody who was not a wrestling fan. See, you can't really compare what somebody who's been a fan in this business who's already been exposed to it. The person who's getting into it, you have to give them a reason to tune in. And the reason to tune in has to be something they can grab onto, something that not necessarily relate to, something that'll be like, holy crap, who's that guy? Not, holy crap, he just did a double moonsault. And again, I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself, but, this is just, an introduction to what I'm going to be doing here. I'm talking about a lot of things on this. This is coming from a wrestling fan who's been a fan of this for 35 years. 35 years. I am not an expert. I wouldn't even call myself a super fan. What I call myself is simply a wrestling fan who cares. I'll never sit here and tell you that my opinion is gospel, that, my word is the only thing you should be listening to. This right here is just that finally I'm able to get an outlet. Thanks to being here at this school, I'm able to use this time that I'm using to get my education to finally get some thoughts out of my head so I can finally, I guess you could say, I'm not going to say any names here. I'm going to bring balance to this discussion. With everything in me, I'm going to try my best to bring balance to this entire IWC, YWC, nonsense that's going on these days. There's a lot of people out here. I mean, it's no different in politics because the vocal minorities will always bark the loudest. And because they're so bombastic with what they say, they'll always get more attention and even more followers simply because they're constantly out there. They're constantly putting themselves in your face, and you have no choice but to listen to them. And, they move the narrative because they're consistent. People who are on my side aren't as consistent because, honestly, I don't think a lot of them care. It's not really that serious to them. But to that segment of people that who I'm talking about, some of you who are listening to this, you know exactly what I mean. See, it's time that majority that's disappeared, it's time that we had a voice again, because I don't think that vocal minority understands just because you're the loudest, it doesn't mean you're the majority now just because other people have decided to stop. Just because you stayed in it doesn't mean necessarily that you will always be the majority that you think you are. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try my best to provide balance to this conversation. I'm going to talk to you about, like I said, from my perspective, from what I'm seeing, because it's hard for me to watch these shows right now and be honest and say, holy crap, I can't wait to watch it again. Now, to be fair, a lot of them would say the same thing, but they decided to latch on to it and keep talking about it simply because it gets them money. Because honestly, if Twitch and YouTube were throwing them a few dollars, do you really think they'd be doing what they're doing? Come on. I'm paying to be in this studio right now. I'm paying tuition to be in this studio right now. And I want to talk about this. And I'm not getting paid a dime. I'm going to do this for everybody out there that wants to have a voice. And when I post all my links to my social media, I mean, by all means, engage with me. If you agree with me, if you're tired of not having a voice, by all means, please hit me up. I will talk about what you want me to talk about within reason. And if you're one of those guys who are a fan of those people who will not be named, by all means, come with the hate all you want to. I welcome it. And, just know I'm not going to fall into your trap of your nonsense or your BS. I will engage you as best as I can. I will try to educate you from the standpoint of somebody who understands, who was a fan of this when it was of this business when it was doing what it was supposed to be doing. Not this, we've evolved and the landscape has changed nonsense that we're seeing right now. The one thing they won't say is, what has it evolved into? What has the landscape changed to? Has it changed for the better? Or has it devolved? Which is the word a lot of them should be using, but they won't do that. And that's what I'm here to let you know. And that's the balance I want to provide to this conversation now. I'm not here to try and, get on podcast one. Like I said, I'm doing this because I'm doing this for educational purposes, yes. But there's times where I believe people, I think the people that understand what I'm talking about, I think they're ready to have their voice heard. I think they're tired of being driven away. I think they want to come back, but the narrative is driven so far off a cliff and it's moved by so many other people that, in all honesty, probably really don't care about this business as much as you think they do. They just want you to believe that because YouTube sends them a check every month. Or because, they have a nice little website that they've set up for themselves with paid subscriptions. And again, we'll get into pseudo experts in quotation marks later. And you can probably name a few of those off the top of your head right now. But I'm not going to get into those right now. But this is something I've been passionate about for a long time. And that passion is starting to wane little by little. These shows for WWE especially haven't become nothing but YouTube clip shows. And that disappoints me because as a diehard NWA WCW guy, I watched it bought out by this company and I hope it will carry on its legacy. And to watch what that legacy got bought and turned into, it disappoints me. And no matter how much I try and get into foreign promotions or American independent promotions, I know that the legacy of what I used to watch is with the WWE. And to me, I have no choice but to continue to watch it because I feel obligated to, because it's all I know. That brand, basically raised me. Yeah, I watch other stuff. I watch your Lucha Underground. I watch your Ring of Honor. I watch your New Japan, on odd replays because there's no way you can watch that crap live at 2:00 in the morning here in America, which is why I don't understand why we put that over so much in this country. Anyway, topic for another day again. But I try my best to go into every single promotion with a open eye. And I live in North Carolina, but I got into a promotion that was in Kansas City, Missouri called the NWL, the National Wrestling League. And, I can understand when I watched it why some people do get attached to independent wrestlers because it ends up creating a different world than what you're used to.